This presentation is by Yitbarek Tibebe on the socio-economic and ecological sustainability of tree planting schemes governance in Ethiopia.
Thank you, everyone. To start, as you all may know, the trees are being planted all over the world as a result of international conventions, regional commitments, and national and local government initiatives. In many nationalities, governments spend millions of dollars every year to plant trees. These planting schemes are basically planted or intended to deliver sustainable social, economic, and ecological outcomes. However, in many countries, rarely have we seen schemes that are successful in terms of delivering these sustainable outcomes. These tree planting schemes and the implementers specifically mostly report the number of trees they have planted. This is also for governments who report how many millions of trees they have planted and how local communities got involved with these tree planting schemes, rather than reporting how many trees have been grown and how many landscapes are covered and how many livelihoods have improved as a result. Here, the focus is, as we have seen, on counting the trees planted, disregarding the outcomes, which has diminished the true value of planting trees, considering them as a simple number of trees rather than potential socio-economic and ecological benefits. However, it should be noted that there are a small number of tree planting schemes all over the world where the implementers are focused on delivering these socioeconomic and ecological outcomes sustainably. In order for these schemes to deliver the intended outcomes, implementers need a mechanism that can ensure not only their planting but also the sustainability of their outputs. That means the sustainability of the socioeconomic and ecological benefits. Hence, these calls for governance mechanisms which are believed or expected to improve the outputs of tree planting schemes, whilst also sustaining the scheme outcomes. The choice of the tree planting scheme's governance mechanisms depends on the implementing bodies and their approach. The performance of this governance approach can be determined through the sustainability of the schemes, their socioeconomic and ecological outputs. These socioeconomic outputs and ecological outputs and their sustainability differs among schemes depending on their contextual factors. This could be a landscape level or socio-political level factors. Because of these contextual factors, it has been argued by many researchers that successful governance approach cannot be adopted or scaled up at a higher landscape scale. That is, there cannot be a comprehensive governance approach. However, the success factors of each tree planting scheme in a landscape can actually be scaled up. With this objective, several researchers tried to develop tools, mechanisms, standards, and principles for a successful tree planting scheme. However, none of these studies are based on a detailed evaluation of the tree planting schemes, their socioeconomic, ecological outputs, and their sustainability. Therefore, we can say that the purpose of this study is to evaluate tree planting schemes in order to adopt the governance approach of the best performing tree planting schemes. This evaluation of tree planting schemes is conducted in Ethiopia by selecting schemes from different landscapes and contexts that represent Ethiopia. In this study, we aimed to assess tree planting schemes and their governance approach and their performance by assessing the tree planting schemes implementation mechanisms, assessing their socioeconomic and ecological outputs, and assessing their sustainability plans, practices, and achievements. Based on these assessments, this study aimed to identify best practice tree planting schemes, their governance approach for scale-up opportunities within Ethiopia and possibly with the rest of Africa as well. In order to conduct these assessments, we selected 16 schemes, tree planting schemes that are being implemented by 13 organizations. We selected these from over 33 tree planting schemes in Ethiopia that are running or that have been running up until till to date. These schemes are selected with the assumption that they represent the Ethiopian context in terms of their social, cultural, ecological, and landscape or economic and political context as well. These selected schemes and their documents are then reviewed to understand the scheme's initiation context, their design, how these schemes are implemented, how these schemes are monitored and evaluated, and their sustainability plans, practices, and achievements. The review of these documents is then supplemented with an interview with scheme managers, with the tree planting scheme managers. And the interview held with these tree planting scheme managers provided more or less what has been reviewed from the project documents. The study also conducted focus group discussions and interviews with beneficiary communities and their representatives. These focus group discussions and the interviews held with the community beneficiaries were in regard to the tree planting scheme outputs. That is, the benefits in terms of socioeconomic outputs, that is the income the beneficiaries generated, and in terms of the vegetation that the scheme has covered in the landscape, and the sustainability potential of the scheme achievements. The data regarding the ecological outputs is further assessed through a remote sensing mechanism and through an in-person observation. Moreover, we can say in this study we tried to analyze the data using comparative case study approach. The case study tree planting schemes implementation mechanisms are compared using standard restoration principles developed by for the UN Decade on Restoration, and we also used the 10 golden rules developed by the Royal Botanic Garden researchers, which is published in 2021 as well. And the schemes are also compared based on their compliance with these principles and rules. We also try to compare the schemes using their socioeconomic outputs, and that means taking the income change that occurred as a result of the scheme implementation on the beneficiary's livelihood. These before and after data is obtained from each of the scheme documents and scheme managers confirmed through beneficiary's response, or we try to compare these responses. Similarly, we tried to also compare the schemes using their ecological output, that is the vegetation cover that the schemes have delivered in terms of vegetation cover change in the area by using the remote sensing analysis. And finally, we also compared the schemes using their sustainability plans, practices, and achievements. These sustainability plans and practices were obtained from the scheme managers and their documents, and legitimately confirmed by communities or beneficiaries. Our results showed that in terms of the scheme implementation mechanisms, most of the schemes complied with at least half of the rules and principles we compared them against. However, some of the schemes have complied with more or less all of the principles and rules that have been compared against. These schemes have scored high in terms of their compliance. In terms of the socioeconomic benefits, scheme managers and their documents stated 40% to 260% income change on the beneficiaries, while the beneficiaries themselves said they have only earned or gained 8 up to 150% income change since the scheme implementation. Similarly, we also compared the scheme vegetation cover change, where the scheme managers and their document stated 0.15 up to 50%, while in our remote sensing we found out that there are some schemes areas where there has been a decrease in vegetation cover change since the project started implementing there. In this regard, we can conclude that most of the scheme's implementation mechanisms, thereby their governance approach, are comparable with one another, with the exception of a few approaches which include their sustainability using beneficiary institutionalization and empowerment through legal recognition. It's also observed in these studies that high socioeconomic or income change outputs and institutional empowerment or community institutional empowerment to be considered by beneficiaries as the primary factor for sustainability of schemes or for choice of schemes by beneficiaries. On the other hand, the socioeconomic, ecological outputs along with the sustainability approach comparison has proven this study to be a good determinant of the tree planting scheme's performance in terms of their governance approach and its output sustainability. Thank you.